Hello friends, welcome to the second part of the series of integrating RTI with ECC S4 to IBP order-based planning with flexible master data. In part 1 of the video, what we have covered is how to set up and configure an BTP account, how to integrate IBP and the BTP account with communication arrangement 0805 and 0574 to ensure that BTP and IBP are integrated and communicating to each other. Now, in the second series, what we are going to cover is the cloud connector setup, how to connect your on-premise ERP, ECC or S4 HANA to the cloud connector, and how in turn map the cloud connector or integrate the cloud connector to BTP so that ERP, ECC or S4 HANA can communicate to IBP via the cloud connector using BTP as a validation, and the same then can be used for performing RTI inbound and outbound transactions. So in this series, what we are going to cover is a high level of how to set up the cloud connector, what are the inputs that we need from the cloud connector to set up an RFC or SM59 connection between the execution system and the cloud connector, how to integrate the cloud connector to the BTP, and also how to initiate and set up the RTI inbound communication arrangement from S4 HANA or ECC to IBP via the cloud connector. The cloud connector itself is an on-premise application that is generally put on a standalone server, and in most of the cases, as a techno-functional IBP consultant, we won't be having access to the cloud connector server because of restrictions and company based policies. But here what I will show you is what are the things at a high level that we need to configure the cloud connector, how to check and validate that a cloud connector is integrated to BTP, and then how to set up the RFC communication. Since I don't have access to the cloud connector, I will walk you through a screenshot which I have taken while working on the cloud connector. So what you are looking into my screen is the web interface of a cloud connector, which is primarily sitting on a server, wherein in the cloud connector, as a first step, you have to first map your execution system or the on-premise system to the cloud connector. So if you look into this screen, you will see that the basis person has already connected the cloud connector to the BTP account. And when I say the BTP account, how can I say that the cloud connector is connected? While setting up this cloud to on-premise connection, the person is supposed to give the subaccount ID of the subaccount that we have created in BTP. Just give it a few seconds to load. So if you see, this is the subaccount RTI com POC, and this subaccount is now connected to the cloud connector. Now once that connection is established, how do you come to know that the connection is successful? So if you go to your BTP, here under connectivity you will see cloud connectors. Once you click onto cloud connector, it will show you whether a cloud connector is in fact connected to the sub account or not. If it is connected, it will show you that the status is connected with the connector ID, and it also shows you the host or the backend system that are exposed via this cloud connector to connect to BTP and then connect to IBP. And the protocol that you see here is RFC, and the backend type is ABAP system. And here you see there is a status called resource which says available. Now what does this mean? As per the requirement of the integration, when we set up a cloud connector on the cloud to on-premise interface, where we connect the on-premise system by giving in the actual server instance, which is basically visible under the internal host, and then accordingly we have to give a virtual host and instance number, which we then refer and use it in all connection, so that based on this virtual host the system is able to connect to the internal host and then establish a connection from the on-premise system to BTP via the cloud connector and in turn to IBP. Now once this is set up, as per the prerequisite in the integration document, we are supposed to create resource on the cloud to on-premise connection, and this resource that are specified here are for integrating currencies, unit of measure, factory calendar, CIF, background RFC, and importing custom functions. So either we can add them as it is, or we can use this as prefix, so that if we add them as a prefix, anything that start with this are taken into consideration. So if you see here in this cloud to on-premise connection, I have SBIC, SBFC, RFC, SIF, BG RFC, and function import interface enabled. These are primarily the resource that we create and assign to a cloud connector cloud to on-premise connection type. Unless and until we assign those resources here in below this resource column, it will show as unavailable. The moment we assign them and activate it, this resource becomes available, and by looking into the BTP I can now see and confirm that indeed we have a cloud connector account that is integrated to this sub account in BTP, and this cloud connector is exposing a backend ECC system with a RFC protocol, and that ECC system is an ABAP based system. So this basically tells me what the connection is and what is needed. Now for functional consultants, there are few things that we need to know, which we need to use from the cloud connector to set up further communication arrangements for RTI inbound, like for inbound master data integration, inbound transactional data integration, which are done by communication arrangement 769 and 770. So for that, few things that are required is also known as the inputs that we need to provide in the communication arrangement. The first and foremost input is the SCC location ID or the cloud connection location ID. You can get that information from the master instance here, which basically gives me the SCC location ID that I need to put as an input into the 769 and 770 communications. Also, while setting up later the outbound connections and all, we also need to have the virtual host and the virtual port inputs in order to configure those outbound communications like 864 and 865. Now if you see here in this virtual host, whatever you see below before the colon sign is the name of the host, and the last two digit is the virtual instance number. So these are the two things that we need here as an input, and along with that we also need input of the SCC location ID which is mentioned here. Now once we have established the cloud connector connectivity is set up and running, now it is time for us to set up the communication arrangement for RTI inbound, which is 769 and 770. So what we will do now here is go and create a communication arrangement of 769. If you see, COM 769 is for inbound integration of transactional data for RTI. Once we create on that, an arrangement name will be created. I will just keep it separate and name it RTI underscore SAP COM 079, and I will create it. Once we come here, we have to define a new communication system that will be used as an inbound system for inbound transactional and master data. For that, we will go and create a new. Now let's say I will name it here, there is no restriction, I will name it RTI underscore inbound, and I will create the communication system. Now since this is an inbound system, I will just click on to inbound system, and here I have to give the logical system. Here when I talk of logical system, I am talking about the ECC logical system that it needs to connect to. So for that we need to find out what is the logical system name of the ECC that we are going to connect. And the easiest way is to you log into SAP, go to SE16N, use the table T000 and execute. And here you will see that we have the logical system, and this is the logical system that we need to put here. So we can just copy paste it and use it and put it over here. So what we will do here is we will put the logical system now. Once we scroll down further, we have to define a inbound user for communication. So for that we have to create an inbound user. So I will create a new user with username and password, and I will create the new user here. It will take me to the new screen. Let's say I put the name of the user as RTI underscore INTG integration. I will now put on a password, so I am putting it in pause. So now I have copied the password and I will paste the password here, and I will create the inbound user. So there is, seems like there is already a user with that name, so I will just create INTG1 and I will create it. So we have now created the new user and we are assigning that new user to the communication system RTI inbound. And if you see, I have added this RTI INTG1 here. Once we have defined the communication system, we need to save it. Now once we have created it, the RTI inbound communication system is created. And now here we also need to define the logical system it is going to connect to. So here we will also mention the logical system. And if you see, these are the inbound services that it is going to refer to, which are the SIF related, and we save it. Now for the purpose of this demo, I will change back the communication user to RTI intake, not the one that I have selected, because that will be what will be communicated with the SM59 connection. So here now if you see, I have rectified the SAP communication 0769 so that it refers to the communication system RTI inbound that we recently created, and I have corrected the user to the intended user RTI intake because I intend to use this user in the RFC connection that we will set up in SM59. So in short, once you create the communication arrangement 079, it will ask you to create a communication system which should be an inbound communication system, which we have named it as RTI inbound. You don't need to put any logical system into an inbound system, just put this check as inbound system, and here assign the proper user that you want to create. Here I have, for example, created RTI intake, but you can create any user with password and save it here. So once that is done, my connection or communication 0769 is now finished. Next is creating the communication 0070 or master data integration for real-time inbound. So for that we will again go and create a new one. So this is the master data one. I will again rename it to specify that we are creating one new. Yeah, this is the 770. Here we don't need to create a communication system since this is inbound. We will utilize the RTI inbound system that we have created before, so that once we select the right system, the correct user also gets populated, and based on the logical system that we have identified in the ERP system, we will go and update the logical system here. Once done, we will save this connection. Now at this point of time, I have already created the master data and transactional data for inbound integration for RTI. Now once we have done that, so based on this diagram, what we have ensured is we have enabled cloud connector to integrate the ERP system, and we have also integrated the cloud connector to the BTP system. Along with that, we have also created the communication arrangement 769 and 770, which are for RTI inbound, so that the cloud connector is now connected and enabled for inbound integration of master data and transactional data. But in order to complete that, I now need to create an RFC or SM59 connection in the on-premise system, so that my ERP system now have an RFC to talk to cloud connector, which in turn will talk to the IBP system via the communication arrangement. So for that, there are few steps that we need to follow, and what are these steps? That is what I'm going to show you. The first and foremost step is to create a connection in SM59. So in SM59 we have to create a above connection, and if you see, I have created an above connection with the name IBP CLNT 100. Remember one thing, you can give it any name, but the client has to be 100. Now before we come here, there are few things that we need to do in ECC before we come and create an SM59 connection. For that, what we have to do is, first we have to define a logical system. Then we have to assign that logical system to a client. So I have already created the logical system IBP CLNT 100. Now I then come to SCC4, where I need to assign this logical system to a particular client, and that client has to be 100. So if you see here, for the client 100, I have assigned the logical system IBP CLNT 100. So we have to perform this assignment before we can go ahead and create an SM59 connection, because we need to have a logical system, we need to assign that logical system to a client, and then we can come into SM59, wherein we have the connection for setting up the RFC between the two systems. So now I will go to this SM59 connection. Here in the target host, what I will put is the IP address of the cloud connector that we have seen here. So this is the IP address of the cloud connector that we need to put in the target host. So if you see, in the IP address it will reflect, but automatically once you put the IP address it will take the server name, and the instance number is 01, because that's what has been configured in the on-premise to cloud connection in the cloud connector by the basis system, and from that person I have got that input. So here in the target host you will put the host of the cloud connector or the IP address of the cloud connector, then the instance number that has been defined in the on-premise to cloud, and then you have to put that instance number here. Once you put onto that, you have to go to login and security, and here the client will be 100, and here we will be using the user RTI integ that we have created recently while creating the communication arrangement 769 and 770. So this is the username and the password we have to put. In the special option, we have to use default gateway for trace export method, default gateway for time alive. The transfer protocol would be background RFC, and serialization will be first serialization. And interface check should be destination for new scenario. Once we put the required input and save it, then whether this connection is working or not, for that we need to perform two tests. One is the connection test. So you see here the connection test is successful. Then the next thing that we need to do is to go and perform an authorization test. So here in the authorization test, it will take whether the user ID is valid or not, and it's valid. So this ensures that using the user ID that I have created in IBP for communication arrangement 769 and 770, I am able to put that user ID with the interface of the cloud connector in the ERP system, and that SM59 connection, when it works fine, ensures that the connectivity between the ERP or the S4 is complete to IBP via the cloud connector and BTP. Once that is done, that means in this diagram, if you refer to, I have configured cloud connector, set up the integration of the cloud connector to the BTP. I have set up the communication arrangement for inbound RTI for transactional and master data from here to here, and at last I have also successfully created the RFC connection from S4 HANA or ECC on-premise system, so that it connects to the cloud connector, which in turn will connect to IBP by doing a validation check through BTP. So that's how the entire integration flow is designed for RTI. Now that said, once we are done, there are few other steps that we need to perform in the ECC end to ensure that our connection is up and running. And for that, what we need to do is the following. We have checked here the connectivity is working fine. Next we go to BD54, wherein I mention the client name and the client description. Then from here I will go to NDV2. Sorry, my bad. So here we assign release type to systems. So remember one thing, for the logical system IBP CLNT 100, we have to select the system type as SAP underscore IBP, not IBP. We have to select SAP underscore IBP, and we have to give the release as 713. That's what is specified as the highest release, and that's what we need to maintain. Once we have done and saved this, we then need to go to CFC1. Where we assign the queue type as I to the logical system. When you assign this for the first time, this operational mode will be blank. This T will be picked up once we do the activation of the background RFC. So when you do it for the first time, you have to just input I here, and the op mode will be blank, and you save it, and then you go to CFC 91. This is where you primarily activate your BG RFC queues. So the first time it will appear as inactive, so you have to come here, do a check, click on to activate it and save it. So once you save, the BG RFC destination will be updated here. Remember one thing, that all the transactions that I am showing here requires authorizations, and this requires high level authorization, so make sure that you get those authorization, or otherwise you won't be able to perform these transactions in an S4 or ECC environment. Then there is one more optional step wherein you can go to CFI1, wherein you can assign a queue prefix to the logical system. Here by default we have CG0 to CG9. So by default, or since this is a demo, I am assigning one prefix type, but we can assign multiple prefix type and save it. And this prefix type will be required while we set up the RTI integration profile in IBP. So that's all what I intended to cover in this section of the video. So till now what we have done, or what we have covered, is we have completed the BTP to IBP setup and connectivity in series 1. In series 2 we have shown how to configure cloud connector, how to map a backend ERP system to the cloud connector, and how to map that same cloud connector to the sub account ID that is being shared by IBP in the same BTP sub account. We have also demonstrated how to create an RFC connection from the on-premise system pointing to the cloud connector, which in turn relays back the connection to IBP. And we have also established the inbound connectivity, or the RTI inbound communication arrangement 769 and 770 for master data and transactional data integration. Now the third or the final part of the next video will cover the last piece of the puzzle, which is creating the outbound integration from IBP to on-premise system, wherein we will see how to create those communication arrangement, how to create a communication user in the ERP or ECC system, and then how we can leverage that user ID in those communication system to enable the RTI outbound. So that's all what I wanted to cover in my video. Thank you, thanks a lot. Please share your feedback and like and subscribe if you have enjoyed watching this video.